Okay, it's corruption, by the way. It's local. It's licenses to become a barber. It's people slowing things down. And I also think a lot of it is our own selfishness. Businesses are very selfish. I know that they spoke about the SALT tax here recently. I'm with a lot of real estate people, and they're complaining about the SALT tax. 80% of the benefit of state and local taxes goes to 5 states, and people make over $500,000 a year. So the real estate people complain to me about the one thing, because it hurts real estate values a little bit. They got to keep carried interest. They got to keep interest deductibility. They got to keep capital gains transfers tax-free. And they've lost one little thing to complain about. And this is all of us. Governments, the people, we just don't get our own way and do what's right for the United States of America. We spend far too much time being parochial. And I can blame businesses. I can blame politicians, et cetera. We're holding ourselves back. And we fix some of these things, which probably some of you have done. So you're doing it. You're building infrastructure and creating schools, and we will, on this kind of a boom, and help a lot more people.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
So there's a lot there to respond to, but one of the issues that we deal with as governors all the time is how do we make sure that the people who live in our state have the skills that are required to get a good job?
Yeah.
And I know that's something you've thought a lot about. Every business executive does think about it. We've worked together on the New Skills for Youth program. We've used a lot of that to start apprenticeship programs and internship programs. But as you think about your workforce needs, now 10 years, 20 years in a changing economy, how do you think about it? How do you think about meeting that challenge for your company and also, more broadly?
Yeah. So I think about our own company, it's actually rather easy. We can hire the best schools, we can pay what we need to pay. We spend $250 million a year directly training, probably like $500 million a year indirectly trained. Just you work with the company, always being trained in new technology, new devices, people always being promoted from a teller to a branch manager, and that's just kind of training. The bigger issue to me is if you go around the world, okay, 30% of our students go to college, 70% don't. That's true fundamentally in Switzerland and Germany. The unemployment rate in Switzerland and Germany for kids 17 to 24 is like 3%. They start apprenticeships. You're in 10th grade or something like that, 1 day at work. Hey, 2 days the next year, 3 days the next year. The business, so locally you need X and you need Y and we need Z. It's got to be done locally with mayors and cities about what do you need. We have to go help train the people. My wife set up a program to train tellers. Okay, we train tellers in community colleges. And when they get out, they have jobs, $35,000 a year with medical. Okay, these are good jobs, they're starter jobs and stuff like that. So we actually know it works. France's unemployment rate with youth is 20%. So what we're trying to do, but we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars around the world looking at this, is to just disseminate the best ideas that you already do. Because it really does work, but it's got to be local. This is not a huge federal program. This is your colleges, your community colleges, your businesses working with you, and the business should say, I'm going to hire those 100 kids, I'm going to help train them, you've got to certify them. So like a community college of New York, if you can't get kids with college, and they don't have to, they can go to college afterwards. Having a job doesn't mean you can't go to college later, and we know it works. In New York City, there's a school called the Aviation High School. Kids travel 2 or 3 hours to go there, the parents want to go there. Most of the kids are minority or from poor neighborhoods. They graduate, get a high school education, $60,000 a year, maintain small aircraft. Almost all of them. That's all we got. And we know what to do, we just don't seem to get out of our own underwear sometimes.
There you have it. So you have many of the nation's governors here with us this morning. What would you say are the 3 public policy changes that you'd advocate for or recommend to us to help us grow the economy and better prepare our states for the future?
So I think one of the things that governors and mayors, and my experience is once they get that job, it's no longer about Democrat or Republican, which I personally don't give a damn about, okay? It's about jobs, schools, roads, hospitals, ambulance times, lights being turned. It's about helping Americans, all of them. And I think business has to play a much more ambitious part of this. I don't think it's going to be done just by government. You need government, civic society, people working together. But the most important ones, we got it, 40% of Americans make $15 an hour or less. Okay, 15% make minimum wage.
Jamie Dimon, stop funding climate change. Change is the worst.
Jamie Dimon,
Yeah, so one of the things, we gotta get more income to these kids. A lot of Americans can't afford a $400 or $500 event. You know, if they have a healthcare event, they can't afford it. They don't have a rainy day fund, so we have to get income of those things. I would like expand the earning and tax credit, et cetera.
Stop funding climate
So,
change.
you know, one of the
New oil,
questions, Jamie,
new gas,
to
new
this
pipeline.
point, and we were talking a little bit about that earlier,
The
is
governors know we only have
I
11
think you've done a
years.
terrific job as a leader
Stop funding climate
suggesting
change.
that business has a role to play.
James,
You know, how do we, because we all try to partner with business to say, come to the table, help us solve these problems, invest in job training, you know.
And a lot of you do. You know, it's more the federal government, which is just crippling. I mean, and you look at what we can't get done, and so I'm the chairman of the Business Roundtable, 200 larger companies. It actually does policy and advocacy around tax, trade, immigration, work skills, diversity, innovation, corporate governance to get people thinking a little bit more long term. And we try to be non-parochial. And a lot of businesses get involved, but you know, some don't. And I think some businesses are short-term focused, some have to be. I mean, you know, if you could afford to do these things, that's great. My number one job, I have to make JP more healthy and vibrant. For my communities, my employees, the people we finance and stuff like that. If I don't do a good enough JP, I fail. But in the meantime, I think I see Peter Scheer there, you know, some of the people at JP Morgan, we've done these work skills programs. We do them in cities. Mayor Duggan of Detroit came up with this idea about, you know, I can't fund, my small minority businesses can't get the same kind of funding that white businesses get. They don't have the same mortgage value, house values, or family to fall back on. And we formed this Entrepreneur Color Fund. And we started small in Detroit, and now we tripled them on Detroit. We're doing it in New Orleans, San Francisco, South Bronx. These programs work. I think businesses have to do it. I think, you know, anyone in government, you know, business, government, and civic society working together, it works. You see it in your state. You see what you guys both done is exceptional. And you know, at the local level, it works better than the federal level. I don't know how to get the federal level working right. We are between gerrymandering, politics. What we're doing to ourselves is a disgrace. I've already mentioned the wide variety of areas that, you know, education, infrastructure, regulation, you name it. You know, companies want to do a good job. Most companies want to participate, and sometimes they don't know. They don't know how they can help you. So you should be unabashed about asking. But I've also found that when we work together, it works. When we don't work together, even JPOint does not want to get involved. I mean, I think we saw happen. You know, businesses. 160 million people work in America. 140 million work for business. And the thought that somebody can have a great society without being fostering good business is not a good idea. And some cities and states, they treat this so badly that they're going to lose. They're going to people to leave, and that's not because they're not virtuous and moral. They just can't afford it.
So, you know, the small business and entrepreneurship, it provides a critical path to economic mobility. And yet evidence would suggest that it's becoming more and more difficult to start and maintain a small business. So what are the biggest headwinds facing entrepreneurs today and small business owners? And what do you think they need to succeed? And in particular, you know, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of the work that you've done on inclusive entrepreneurship and including, we talked a little bit earlier about your Entrepreneurs of Color Fund, which I know is expanding in our region in the DC, Maryland market, which we appreciate very much.
Yeah. So, you know, small business, 28 million businesses in America. The biggest 2,000 do maybe half all capital expenditure, so they're important. This country will not be worse off without Boeing. Okay, we need these very successful large companies. There are 20 million which are one person. Think of nail shops and pizza shops, and there's 8 million of all various sizes. When we survey a lot of small business people, I urge all of you, take 10 small business people to lunch and ask them the question. And what they will tell you is the onerous, excessive licensing regulations at the federal, state, and local level. So you want to be a barber in New York City, I think it takes 3 licenses. There are 3 different jurisdictions, you have to pay, and you have to be trained. And this training is 6 months. So, you know, even if there's open jobs, you know, people can't afford to move to take the job because it takes too long to get the train, even though they would do it in another state. So it is a form of sinecure. I mean, so I know a lot of the governors here, and I know mayors look at all the rules and regulations, just start killing the ones which are stifling bureaucracy, that are not protecting people. Obviously, we got to protect people, and companies should be held to be liable if they do bad, wrong things or pay for their mistakes. But it's mostly that. It is, and we've heard entrepreneurship. I'd add the litigation system, okay, and the healthcare system. Our healthcare system costs 18.5% of GDP. We have among the best ever. Pharma, medical, you name it, hospitals, people get in right away, emergency rooms. But we fail on wellness. We have too much obesity. We don't. Drugs are overused and underused. End of life is 15%. It should be half of that. Our medical costs are twice the average developed nation. And that is, Warren Buffett calls a tapeworm of American business. It will be a tapeworm. And for lower paid individuals, they can't afford a deductible. They have a problem. So we work, like JP Morgan, we actually reduced deductibles on lower paid employees, just lower paid employees, such that if they do their wellness program, there's no deductible. So they don't get this crippling, $1,000 bill or something like that in a month. So small businesses, we got to make it easier for them to get medical insurance for the people and reduce the burden. It's not, by the way, it's a little bit, they say, access to capital, but that's very rarely the case. I do think for some community banks who are under a lot of pressure from regulators, they have cut back the small business lending because of it. So I do think we could open that spigot a little bit to make it easier. And then special programs. The Entrepreneur Color Fund, it's not traditional bank financing. We go an extra mile and take a little extra risk. And we may not get the same returns, but it works. And we're doing it for entrepreneurs of color, we're doing it for women entrepreneurs. We're going to seek out now, and we're doing it in Baltimore, and we're doing it in Rhode Island and Providence. We're seeking out how can we do something different we've never done before. And maybe we're earning some market return, but we're helping society. And I think businesses should be trying to do that because this won't age well if we don't fix some of these issues.
I think we ought to turn it. We have a handful of governors here.
We want to open it up to our fellow governors. Anybody got some comments or questions or input? Don't be shy. Governor Herbert.
I'm never shy.
No, thank you.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you, Jamie. And Spence Eccles says hi.
Great.
So here's the question. It's kind of an accusation that we hear a lot. The economy is doing well. I think most of the states feel like the economy's recovered and we're doing better, so I feel that way in Utah. But the accusation I hear all the time is the rich are getting richer, poor staying poor, middle class is shrinking and has a disproportionate amount of the tax burden. I like your observation.
Yeah. So whenever I hear people say something, I try to look at where they're right. So even some of these very left, social democrats, etc., some of that's actually right. Lower paid folks do not earn a living wage anymore, and it used to be that if you were unskilled, you could get a job in a factory or something, or construction, and eventually you'd earn a living wage. That may not be true anymore. That's why I would expand the earned tax credit. Some middle class wages are going up a little bit, not quite as we've seen, partially because of the anemic growth. So if I was a politician, I'd want a growth agenda, because nothing pays for anything like growth. Growth pays for roads, it pays for education for that person. Most of the people who run these restaurants now started that way. They're proud of themselves. And we've got to get dignity back to work. And of course, if we have more people working, you'll have less crime, less corruption, less opioid, more household formation. So I think we have to acknowledge it. And the issue is getting growth, sharing the wealth a bit better. I think the rich have made a lot of money. So if I was a Democrat, I think the Democrats should acknowledge a lot of things the government did not work. They have failed, and we spent trillions of dollars on it. And that the American public, including Democrats, want to know that if you take more money, whether it's at the state level or the federal level, what are you going to do with it, as opposed to just goes to your friends and family. And so there's this notion that somehow, that when money goes to Washington, it's a great sucking sound, it's not being properly used. And so Democrats should acknowledge that. Republicans have to acknowledge we need proper safety nets for the poor, the sick, the old. We're failing to educate our kids, and then come together and the programs actually work. And and if you're going to tax more, which I think we're end up doing as a nation, I think it's unavoidable. Let's attack some of the problems, and let's make sure that we have things that work, as opposed to just more taxation, more stifling bureaucracy, more finger pointing, and things like that.
But sticking with that point for a minute, I think we all agree work provides dignity more than just a paycheck. But the reality is the changes in our economy are faster than we've ever seen. In the last recession, most of the jobs lost, and people who lost their jobs, those jobs just required a high school degree. And since that time, almost all the jobs created, and I'm sure this is true of your company, in order to get a decent job, you need to have something more than a high school degree. Maybe not a 4-year degree, maybe not 4-year college, but a credential is something. So, but yet the majority of Americans don't have that.
Yeah.
So what do we say to people who just have that high school degree, who want a good paying job, who can't feed their family on $12 an hour? How do we, deal with that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's true. So further, technology is the best thing ever done to mankind. The notion that technology is a bad thing is a bad idea. It's why we live longer. It's why we have this wealthy, prosperous nation of ours. It's why the health is. It's why everything is better. If you don't believe me, go back 100 years. My grandparents were Greek immigrants. They came here with the shirt in their back and dirt. They didn't inherit any wealth. And if you got to one, you might live to 50. Okay, so everything is much better, and we should acknowledge that. But it is true that we are leaving behind segments of society don't have the education. And my wife is working, she's got, I think, 100 interns and kids going into various schools and internships where they're going to get well-paying jobs. And companies do it. We train people all the time at the start of a job. You're doing it at the University of Rhode Island, University of Maryland, and again, it's going to have to be local. And then my other view is as a company, so people worry about this. So we have 8 million car and truck, taxi and truck drivers in America. If somehow AI is able to get self-driving, boom, people making $65,000 a year out of work. That's not going to work really well. And therefore, we have to have a retraining, relocation, income assistance if it happened too fast. Remember, this has been happening our whole lives, but it's possible to be too fast. So at JP Morgan, for example, we're looking today, and we know that AI will reduce the people in call centers and operating centers. So we're going to be really prepared so that they use attrition, let it come down a little bit, retrain them to do other jobs. There are tons of other jobs we need to be done, and even retrain them to get jobs at other companies. So we know that in Phoenix, or in this city they want coding, in this city they need phlebotics, in this city they need welding, in this city they need. We're going to pay our people to go get trained, get another job, and an equal to paying job. It's not going to work if you have a family making $65,000 a year and there's an available job at $25,000. That's just not going to work. So again, I think all of these things go back to training, skills, apprenticeships, internships, lifelong education that would work for Americans.
Any others want to weigh in on that particularly, on workforce, job training, or some other topic? Governor Stitt.
Yeah, well, first off, I'm so sorry. I can't speak for all the governors, but sorry about that outburst here. That was uncalled for. We appreciate you coming and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
So regarding the getting capital, so as far as encouraging capital, getting to our small businesses, our minority businesses, what you did a very good job of explaining how our economy is moving with the small entrepreneurs. Is there anything we can do from a state banking regulatory environment or a federal regulatory environment to ease the burden on large banks and our community banks, whether it's tier 1 capital ratios, or where do you think the balance is there, protecting the taxpayers and the insurance versus encouraging access to capital in our small businesses?
So one thing that I should mention about America's strengths, and if you get to go around the world, you see these kind of things. We have the best, widest, deepest, most transparent financial markets ever. Better than anybody. And it's part of the economic strength. It's kind of the flywheel of this thing. I'm not talking about big banks. I'm talking about big ones, small ones. We bank certain companies in 20 countries. We move $6 trillion a day. But part of that mosaic is venture capital, private equity, small business, small banks. And it is true, and I'm very sympathetic that a lot of small banks, and I meet with them all the time, we're the largest bank to small banks, they would tell you it's the cost of regulation. They have more compliance officers than loan officers. It's the fear of pissing off the local examiner. So it's not even Dodd-Frank. It's just they're told, we don't want any more of these types of loans or something like that. It's the litigation cost if you're wrong. So a lot of banks, if you assert it, they stay away from anything which might create a litigation cost because it's so capricious and arbitrary. And and I think it's probably the Achilles heel of America too. It's ruining self-responsibility and the punishment doesn't fit the crime, etc. And then local regulations. And again, we should applaud entrepreneurs. We should applaud small business people. We should applaud job creators. And so we're thinking that JP Morgan, we have 5,000 branches, and we're going to put these big screens in all these branches. to have people like General Ray Oriano or some great small business person or a governor talk to, if we get 50 small business people in every branch, that's 25,000 people. And to talk about what works and what doesn't work. The other thing, by the way, is when we partner with a lot of people. So we're doing this great work in Detroit, but we have people on the ground at a not-for-profit who's working with the entrepreneur about what they need to learn to get more traditional bank financing. Budgets, leases, how you sign a deal with the federal government, hiring people, where do you place the branch? Where do you place their next business to maximize traffic? How do you do various things? So there's a lot of things to do to foster entrepreneurship at a local level and then change some of these regulations and get a little bit easier in these community banks.
Governor Carney.
So in your response to Governor Hogan's question at the outset, you mentioned that we're failing inner city kids, and you referenced your wife's great work in New York City. Have you learned anything I think it's a problem in every small town, city, large city across the country. Have you learned anything through your work there that you can help us with respect to our efforts for educating inner city kids?
Yeah, so we should send you some information, but what we know already is that internships, apprenticeships work. The businesses have to have it certified. It's got to count for college credit or high school credit. And to the extent, I don't believe unpaid internships. I think if you can afford it, it's unfair to have kids work for free. I think there's something bothers me about that. It's got to be at the local level. And you got to get help from the community college. So in one of these towns, the community college, they like the idea, but they won't certify the position. So if you go to Germany or Switzerland, these kids what they do in that thing about machine tooling, coding, they get college credit for it. So it opens up all these horizons for them. And so it really is at the local level, working with the schools, high schools, community colleges. We have to convert high schools back to not just learning about life, but leaving with a livelihood. And we used to be very good at that. Remember, we had these vocational schools and all over the country, and they might teach welding or construction or electrical, not engineering, but electrical work. How does it be wired? There's 7 million jobs open in America today. Most of them are well-paying, and they're not being filled. And these things we've got to get cracking at that because it would do a great thing to do. And so,
Governor Bullock.
Jamie, it's heartening as you talk about what JP Morgan's doing as relates to AI and changes and actually making sure that workers are retrained even if they're not at your own company. Not enough companies necessarily are looking at sort of that long-term social contract. How do we, either at the state or federal level, incentivize businesses to be investing in worker training, and even more so than they're investing in business equipment or robots? And also, how do we de-incentivize the growth of independent contractors?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of the things, I do think there's a somewhat legitimate issue about long-term thinking. So for JP Morgan, we don't do any, I've never worried about quarterly profits, ever. I worry about people, systems, ops, technology, products, services, costs. Of course we make a huge amount of mistakes, but we build for the long term, and I do think it's a little bit overly focused. We've urged companies, and I think the BRT recommended this, don't forecast quarterly earnings. Have quarterly numbers, be transparent, but earnings is kind of a tip of an iceberg. Prices are changing, the weather changes, it's almost impossible to forecast, and companies get their back up against the wall and disappoint people. I think part of that is also, again, class action suits and litigation. People are so cautious of this stuff, but I think businesses want to do the right thing for the long run. I think businesses attract the shareholders they deserve, by the way. So I think if you're overreacting to short term, Warren Buffett talks about the earnings thing as being a very important thing. He never worries about it, but that company should focus. And of course you have shareholders now, including your pension plans, stuff like that. So here's another one. Here's an inconsistency, an hypocrisy in America. A lot of state-owned pension plans will come up to me and they want to know exactly what we're doing for the long run, for my employees, for this community. We tell them. And they want to know about compensation, which I think is all legitimate. They then turn around and invest in hedge funds and things like that get paid 20% of the profits of that year. So very often they're incenting exactly the behavior they say they don't want themselves. So if shareholders are doing that, then companies can react. And so in America, this is a major thing. We've gone from 8,000 public companies to 4,000 public companies. We are driving them private because of all these issues I mentioned, regulations, litigation, short-term incentives. It makes it hard for companies to think long-term. So we just got to bring back the notion of thinking long-term, explain it. Larry Fink at BlackRock wrote a thing about that we should describe to you what we're doing. We're opening, now we've gotten permission to 400 new branches. That's 4,000 people directly. That's going to be another 8,000 people indirectly. When we go into Anacostia, Baltimore, Prince George's County, Ward 7, Ward 8 over here, we go in with all of JP Morgan. We open a branch, for a color, philanthropy, education for people who need financial education, charity. We do the whole thing. And so, like the big shift at Amazon, it wasn't just the 25,000 jobs Amazon going to do. It's probably going to be 100,000 jobs supporting it. And they would have gone from low skill to high skill to consultants and lawyers to restaurants and barbers and construction workers, and that's the shame. That's what they lost. The whole ecosystem that creates jobs and furthers interest, and cities and states that act that way, they will be long-term losers. I was in New York City in 1974, and we had our financial crisis and crime and all these terrible things. 10 Fortune 50 companies left the city in a 5-year period. Exxon, which went to Dallas, JCPenney went to Texas, American Airlines left. It was amazing. Companies were just leaving. And so, cities and states can foster an attractive environment and then help you guys do the other parts. I think business is not to blame for all these bad outcomes. I think business could do more to help fix the bad outcomes.
What about the incentivizing or discouraging independent contractors?
I think that's a valid point, okay? So our whole Detroit effort started when Lee Saunders, who runs AFSCME, I was talking to him about a corporate governance issue with JP Morgan. He said, I don't care about that. What I care about is in Detroit, which hadn't gone bankrupt yet, my workers are going to retire and they're going to lose their pension plans. And he said the average pension plan for someone who's worked for 35 years is $20,000, and they don't get Social Security. I didn't know that. I said, that's terrible. We're a huge bank in Detroit. I said, I'm going to help you. So he and I have become friends, and we try to help get the city through, which is why we made this huge effort in Detroit. It's one of our hometowns where we came from, but they also, the SEIU came to see me at one point and complained that we'd outsource certain janitorial jobs and guards, and we did. And I listened to Andy Stern. He said, don't meet with him. I'll meet anybody. I'm not afraid to talk to anybody about anything. And he said, you did it, and the guard is the same guard who shows up. They get the same pay. You pay the independent firms, $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000. The reason it's profitable for them and you is they took away their medical. And I took back all those guards, all of them. JP Morgan does not need to make its profit off the backs of the medical stuff for our guards. Now, some companies, by the way, not in that position, they can't afford medical. So I'm very sympathetic. I tell all these people who do all the do-gooders, yeah, well, go run U.S. Steel during the tough times. It's much tougher, and that they're your survivor. And when you're trying to fight for survival, it's different. But in the meantime, companies can try to be really good corporate citizens. Train their own people. Don't outsource something. But the only way you're going to save money is because you don't give them medical. Treat people with respect. JP Morgan ourselves, we subsidize 90% of people who make under $60,000 medical. We and then we make it freer with health accounts, etc. I went out. I found out one day that our 401k, we gave these huge matches, and all the money is going to our wealthy paid people. So I limited the match to the higher paid people. I asked the question one day, why don't people put money in? We give them free money. We match it 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. 40,000 people weren't putting money in. And I did an analysis. Why? They were all people making under $40,000 a year. They needed the money. It wasn't that they were dumb. And so we started that we automatically gave them $750 in their account. You make under $60,000 a year, we open a 401k for $750 for you. And then if you put more money in, we match it too. To try to help take care of the lower paid folks who are critical to the success of JP Morgan. And so there are things that people can do, and some companies do, and jawboning, sharing best ideas, those are the best ideas I can have.
So you mentioned all those companies leaving New York, and you mentioned Amazon, which we're working hard to try to steal over to Maryland. The question is, what do we have to do to get JP Morgan?
Well, you did a good thing right from the start, and you elected Larry Hogan. Because when you're a company, well, of course you want to go to places where you're welcome, they listen to you, you have an open conversation, make it better. And we have a great relationship with most of the states here, Texas jobs are going like this, Delaware, Utah, you name it. I mean, I think a lot of here. So it literally is to be a welcoming place and consistent. You know, it's consistent because we have to deal with around the world. If governments are hugely inconsistent, you kind of tend to stay away. So think of parts of Europe.
We talked a little bit about this backstage, and I think you and I both feel passionately about it. I think a lot of our audience would like to hear about this. Yeah, the American public today is deeply divided along political lines, and you have to navigate, you know, both through the court of public opinion. You have 250,000 employees, I think, in a private enterprise. I mean, how do you approach a collaboration and cooperation with the government in such a polarized time?
Yeah, so this may surprise you a little bit, but obviously family is the most important thing to me. My wife and my children. You know, I have 3 daughters and 4 granddaughters. I don't know how that happened, but the next most important thing is the United States of America. It is still the shining city on the hill. And if you don't believe me, you spend a couple weeks on the road with me in other parts of the world. It's not even close. So I'm a huge patriot that way, and I think that is what we need to do, is focus on what is good for the United States and not always what's parochial. And but I find your specific question.
How about the polarization? Talk about some of the facts you thought were the problem.
I try. Well, it's more federal government than most, and I always try to listen to both sides and try to understand when they may be right. So I hear about lower pay, they're right. When I hear about we're not doing jobs, they're right. When I hear about inner city schools, they're right. But slogans are not policy. We have to get much smarter about policy that gets done, and governors learn that right away. You can get elected saying anything you want about the rich, the poor, taxes, but if you don't get the roads fixed, and you don't get the hospitals working, you don't get kids jobs, and you'll fail as a governor or a mayor. And so I try to listen. Like I said, I met with the union leaders. I'm responsive when they complain about something like that. On the other hand, we write extensively about public policy. So you see JP Morgan Chase, we educate the world about economy. We go to Mexico and Argentina and about how you develop capital markets, how do you develop entrepreneurship, how do you get your universities. So we want to foster a very healthy economic environment, and it is part of my job. I have never been conflicted, ever. I don't buy this thing about that companies only care about shareholder value. That's just not true. Okay, I care. Most of the CEOs I know would agree with me is that you got to do a great job for employees to do a good job for customers. If I don't serve my customers right, they don't come back. And right is better, faster, quicker, cheaper, and more next year than this year. And my communities, if we're not good in communities, you don't want us there. You know, and I don't look at JP Morgan. We operate in like 2,000 little cities and little cities around the world, but I treat it exactly the same as if you own the corner bakery store. That corner bakery store is a community citizen. They hire a kid in the summer, they get the ice off the front so someone doesn't break their leg, they participate in the local Little League or a church or a mosque or synagogue or something like that, because that's our community. That's how you teach people. And I think just because you're big doesn't mean you should stop doing that. So I've never been conflicted between the two. But I remind people, if I don't build a healthy, vibrant company, then it's just all talk. I have to have a healthy, vibrant company first, and then I can do all these other good things. Our people love it, by the way. So all the things we talk about we're doing, skills around the world, entrepreneur of color funds, we're doing really special things to advance black leaders inside our company. Our people love it. They just go, my God, we're not only doing a good job for our customers, we're doing it for our communities. They get to do volunteer hours, and so I think it lifts up everybody.
Governor Cicilline.
Thank you. Jamie, let me ask you a question. What do you think could be done better to enhance financial literacy in our schools? I mean, we've lost a generation. They don't understand the cost of credit, budgeting process, so forth and so on, and then we throw them in the world without any foundation.
So I think, I remember when I was a young CEO at Bank One, they asked me to go talk to kids in like 3rd or 4th grade, and I read them a little book, and I said, this isn't going to work. You know, like they don't understand what I'm talking about. I certainly don't understand where they're coming from. You got to teach in schools. So if I were all of you, I would take in every high school, maybe start earlier, basic financial education. What is a rainy day fund? When do you need life insurance? What is a bank account? How can you avoid payday lenders? And I do another thing, nutrition and health. Like walk a couple miles a day. Like just because those two things will be critical for the future of society. We do it extensively, but you can't like rely on just, I think it needs to be done in churches, schools. We actually, but now on our app, so if you are a Chase client, we give you can buy and sell stock for free. and we give you eat for free, tools that you can use to look at retirements and things like that. But you know what's become really popular? You get for free your FICO score, your credit score. So you open it up, look at your credit score, and we're starting to educate how can you improve it. You can improve it by having $400 a day rainy fund. You can improve it by paying this next bill coming up on time. 10 million people signed up for it like that, and we haven't marketed it. So people are dying to have it. And I've asked the people who run our retail system, when we go to Ward 7 and Ward 8 and Anacostia, try something different. You know, have wine and cheese for single mothers who can bring their kids in and then educate them about a rainy day fund. Just a rainy day fund. You know, just how you start investment. What's a 401k? And so I think we have to do it. We've done a bad job. And we're going to try everything. We're going to test everything, but I really think it should start in the schools.
You made a comment earlier, and we all know this, that there are millions of open jobs, many people who want jobs, and they're not getting matched up. Some of it I find is that companies are still searching for people that have the four-year college degree when they don't actually need the four-year college degree to do that job. So how do we deal with that?
Totally true. Again, I would listen. When people say that something like that to me, I don't know it, I go study it. And I did. It's true. Companies became lazy. So they said college degree required. It was just an easy scale. It was just an easy screen.
The screen.
And so think of tellers. It's not required. And so we went back to JP Morgan and took the college degree required off of tens of thousands of jobs. It's not required. Worse than that, a lot of college kids, if they go become a teller, do you think they want to be a teller? Probably not. So there's turnover, attrition. I'll make you bet the kids that graduate high school or community college, they get that $35,000 a year job with medical, pension, 401k. You know, they are thrilled and they move up the ladder. You know, like the guy, my wife was in the room and a guy stood up, a woman stood up with all the jewelry and stuff and said, those are just starter jobs. They're dead-end jobs. And he stood up, he's an attractive black man. He said, ma'am, I started as a teller at JP Morgan Chase. I'm now a managing director. I'm responsible for hiring 40,000 people a year. I'm so proud of what I've accomplished and what this company's done for me. And so things like that, we got to tell the story. Tell the story. And
last question.
but the BRT's to look at that too, by the way.
It's a big
To take it out where it's not necessary. And also, we went to the FDIC, Yelena McWilliams, and we told her we can't hire felons. We didn't do serious crimes. We can't hire felons in a lot of jobs in our industry by regulatory statute, effectively. She changed it. We're hiring felons now. In fact, Peter Shearer, who I know we both love, was in Detroit yesterday. There was a picture of him with the felon now looking for us to say thank you. Give people a chance. If you pay the crime in society, you have a second chance. And so there are all these things you can do.
Housing affordability, there's lots of state programs, federal programs. Governor Bullock has a first-time homeowner savings account where you can save money tax-free now. Obviously, if you're in a state without income tax, it's not helpful. If the federal government would do it, it would be more helpful. What do you think the solution is to the housing affordability issue?
Yeah, so one of our economists did a study which showed that affordable housing is least affordable and least available in the places that have the most land use restrictions. Okay, so our regulations have made it very hard to build affordable housing. We do $1 billion a year affordable housing, equity, debt, stuff like that. The other thing is, and I like it, is we actually did a study and it showed that if you had a rainy day fund, the chance of a mortgage default is like 20% if you don't, if you have the exact same credit stuff. So teaching people education is important. But we messed up the mortgage business. So after the crisis, we massively overreacted. There are 3,000 federal, state, and local origination and servicing requirements. Like we send you a bill, 3,000. The cost of that we think is added 30 basis points to mortgages. Because of that, mortgages are less available, less affordable, and more expensive. And then litigation on top of that. Most banks have gotten out of FHA lending because of litigation behind it. But the people being hurt, and we think it's $1 trillion of net new mortgages, are self-employed, immigrant, prior default, younger, and poor. And these are not subprime. These are just not giving a chance to those people for those things. So fix the mortgage market, look at your local zoning rules, education. Those we will get more people living in homes.
So we are just about out of time. I want to thank you so much for joining us. This has been a fantastic panel, and I appreciate the way you've been so open with us and covering a range of topics. I will again thank you for your partnership on the New Skills for Youth program. It's been fantastic. Those governors who don't know about it, I'd encourage you to learn about it. We've started internships, apprenticeships, career and technical education. I can't thank you enough for your partnership. But with that, I'd like to give you, a couple of minutes to offer any closing remarks.
So the only closing remarks is we could fix all this. Okay, I don't know exactly how to fix the federal system, but we can fix all this if we roll up our sleeves, we get in the room, we listen to each other, we analyze it, we come up with really good policy, and then you all, your politicians, you have to convert that policy to educating and moving the population with you. It doesn't work when they don't. So that's obviously not my expertise, but that's the kind of stuff works. And the last thought I'll just leave with, I appreciate the fact that, I know a lot of the governors in this room, those of you who've done a great job for your communities and mayors. It's great you're doing this because I hope when you get together privately, you kind of shed the Democrat-Republican thing, just worry about what works for America because we can make it a better country for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.